Greetings, Commander. This is the TTM podcast requesting permission to dock with the SS Giant Pod. Permission granted. Docking procedure is beginning now. This is the most ambitious crossover in history.
Well, this is really, let's just bring the listener in. We're sat in the TTM Tavern right now, which could be a sauna. It could be many things. I'm getting casting couch vibes as well.
Absolutely. It depends which couch we're talking about, Andy.
That couch.
Yeah.
I can confirm I've never been asked to do anything I don't want to do in this building.
No, I think, look, it's a purely professional building where we come together as one and do some remarkable things for your audio pleasure.
Okay, so we better sound off as well. So we've got Dev, make some noise.
How we doing? Dev or James? These days it's James, more professionally.
Right. But we also have James sat to your right.
We are James and James.
Yeah, absolutely. James Harrison, or, called Harrison, Harry, Has. And again, like the other James, as I get older, a more professional vibe would just be James.
Right. Okay, I'm going to call you James and Dev, though, just for a little bit of separation.
Yeah, that's all good.
So tell me about TTM. We're sat here in your HQ, and we're about to embark on a first ever Giant Podswap. So tell me about this place that we're sat in. Tell me about the genesis of TTM and what you guys are up to.
Well, first of all, where we're sat right now, we needed a proper professional outlet to do our podcasting. Too many times in the past when we're doing our podcasting, it would be in a kitchen or it would be in some random place where the sound wasn't, let's say, 100%. And we interview people from within the sporting world, such as ex-Premier League footballers, boxing champions. In my house in the kitchen where we were doing our original podcasting, when the wind would blow, there's an extractor fan, and all you would hear when the wind blowed was this fan just going on the podcast. And it was at that moment I thought, you know what, I've had enough of this. I think we need to look at getting a purpose-built place for us to do our podcasting and to actually give it the professional credit that it deserved.
Right. We used to do a little bit in the Archangel, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we would go in. My fiance's the landlady of the Archangel, so we were able to get access out of ours, especially during lockdown when we were illegally going in there in the dark. The only people in the building. And bear in mind, our building's from for the 13th century.
It's old.
It was scary.
There were times going up them stairs. And we're talking at like 1 a.m, and we're in the one of the oldest pubs in the country, I'm led to believe, and you're going up the stairs and you have to walk through a Victorian room to get to the library where we were recording. And you would always just have that fear in the back of your mind, do I need to turn around and do a double take? Is there something there? And it was a sort of race in my mind where I would go, okay, we've got 5 seconds, just get through it, keep your head down, keep your hands near your sides, just get through, keep your head down. There is no such thing as ghosts or anything like that.
Well, there is the story, isn't there? So we went in there.
Yes.
We went down there the night before we were going to first record in there, and we left the 3 microphones in there, set them up with the muff on it. Yeah,
the what on it?
The muff. The foam, the foam cover, the muff. Yeah.
So I just get casting couch flashbacks.
So there were 3 mics, each had a muff on it, and we left them on the table set up. We went down there the next day, and one of the muffs had gone, hadn't it?
One muff was missing. It was a missing muff.
So we were a muff down, and to this day, nobody knows where that muff went.
It's gone from the library in the Archangel in Froome. We do have our suspicions over a potential couple of workers down there,
who are no longer employed.
Employed. But look, at the end of the day, it didn't deter away from the achievements that we want to achieve. We still got to podcast. We still, get to do what we want to do. And you talk about TTM and how it was born. it was born with someone, from our cadet days, Andy.
Yeah.
We used to go to Army Cadets in Frome, and when we were at Army Cadets, the size of that platoon at its peak was the leader in our, I wouldn't just say company. A company, obviously, in the Army Cadet world is where you make up different platoons. So Frome Platoon, Shepton Platoon, Midsummer Norton Platoon, which made up a company called Normandy. And then there was obviously 4 companies, which then made up the battalion. The people that we had at Frome were some of in my year at school, what were classed as tearaways. People who didn't really have an outlet to do anything in life. There was nothing, the age-old question of what is there for the youth to do in this town besides football and maybe canoeing in town. and I think yeah, absolutely, but Army Cadets for us was a release. It was a way out of, for some people it was a real release of life, a great way to meet friends, to learn discipline, to learn respect, and to learn to fend for yourself in a warm way, really. And actually some of the friends that I made in Army Cadets sorted me out for life. So going back to TTM, it gives an opportunity. TTM is an opportunity for people to go and achieve something if you don't have the means to achieve it, i.e. normally to go into sports media and a media outlet, you usually have to go to university, you usually have to get a degree. But what me and James are doing is trying to break down boundaries, especially for those people in town that are like ourselves, who never went to university, never had an opportunity to go to university, who would have most probably thrived in a university setting. I know I would have. Never got the opportunity.
Me not so much.
Maybe not so much you, but I, in all seriousness, I think I would have thrived in a university setting. I think I would have done well. And the reality is, TTM is proof that you can go out there, speak to celebrities, interview them, and it just goes to show that you don't have to go to university to actually go out and achieve it.
Word. Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't go to university either, and it's just about you watching and learning as well.
Yeah,
and also it's really important about picking your circles as well, who you choose to let into your life, who you choose to spend time with and stuff. I know a lot of people. I like a lot of people, but I'm very choosy about who comes into that sort of more inner ring.
Yeah.
And generally it's people that are doing something, because I find that they're pushing me. It may be that they're doing something that's completely different to my own ambitions, but to see them working on things, to see them striving for stuff, and to see the passion, I respect that, and it makes me want to do more. I guess it's just it's almost like a primal thing of like not wanting to be left behind by the pack or whatever.
Yeah, not being stuck in the mud when you look through the veil of social media, for instance, and you see people that you haven't saw for years that are going out traveling the world with great jobs, and you're thinking, God, I wish that could be me. And I see what you mean. You don't want to be stuck in the mud. But in terms of what you're saying, in terms of TTM for us, we'll explain while we're here how TTM is and how it works. It stands for Think Twice Medias. It's a multimedia outlet which is now split into 2. You have TTM-Sports and you have TTM Dark. In terms of sports, as I've said earlier, it's about interviewing people and doing fun things from within the sporting world, where we do our challenges, which we'll talk about no doubt later. And James, you want to talk about TTM Dark?
So TTM Dark it's the conspiracy stuff, the UFOs. So the first ever TTM podcast, which I wasn't involved in, you did the UFO guy, Steve Fielding, who's a guy from Bristol who claimed to have seen UFOs, been abducted by aliens, everything else. And to be fair, it was a good way to start off for you guys. And then it sort of fell away a little bit, didn't it? And I got wind that this was all going on. And I was getting on to James like, well, what are you up to? When's your next one? What are you doing next?
Yeah.
And without saying it to him, he could probably tell he wants in on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember TTM started off with Dave Vowles and Simon Marshall, and it started off where I reached out to Steve Field and we thought, well, let's do a podcast. I don't know where the idea came from. Let's just do a podcast. It's something that's going on, and something we always have really good conversations about the world and about life and about how people live and sport and love, everything you can possibly think of. there's a conversation to be had. So we thought, well, let's get some of this down. I reached out to a lot of the UFO communities because we all agreed, let's open up a UFO podcast, something that we'll always have people's opinions on, whether you're for or against, and we'll get into that later on our show on TTM Dark. But we got Steve Fielding in, and we went to Bristol. I won't reveal the exact location of where he lived, so I don't think it's fair. But we picked him up. As soon as he came out of his house, I thought, oh, for fuck's sake. I thought, here we go. Do you know what I mean? Got him in the car, and actually, within speaking to him for the 40-minute journey back to Frome, really nice guy, telling us about, allegedly what happened to him. And I said, well, look, just save it. And we sat down in a kitchen, and we had a mobile phone with like a £3.99 Amazon microphone attached to the phone. And we said, just go for it. Tell us your story. And as he was telling us the story, I mean, from when he started off working for UFO magazine, he was sort of, I was hooked straight away until it got to a point of the interview when he turns around and said that he had actually had sexual relations with an alien. And at that point I thought, oh God, I said, we've now hit something here. And the silence when he actually said that, it went like this.
Right.
I have actually had, intercourse with an alien. And I went, okay then. How does that work? So it was a difficult moment, but from there, the story then takes another turn. We dropped Steve Fielding off. I put it out. I opened up Instagram accounts, and I was really running before TTM could walk, and I'm still guilty of that today. I'm still always guilty of that because I'm always trying to push us further and get us better out there. But just look around a year into it, look at now what we've got because of the relentless pursuit of something to try and achieve. For me, it's outlet of life.
Can I tell the story of my first dealings with TTM?
What, your 5-star rating on Apple Podcast?
Well, that was the first. The first thing I did was
to another fantastic installment from these three guys.
Yeah, the first thing I did was put a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast because I thought I'll keep them on side. And then eventually, James came to me and he said, "We want to do a conspiracy theory." Now, I've always been well into conspiracy theories on the quiet. Believe me, if there's a conspiracy theory, I've probably looked at it. Not necessarily believed it, but I find them interesting nonetheless. So he goes, "Yeah, we want to do a 9/11 one." And I said, "Right, that's great because I know a lot about 9/11. I've been looking at 9/11, researching, watching all the shit you can, you name it, I've probably seen it." So he goes, "Come and do a 9/11 one." So I said, "Right, brilliant. Come round on Wednesday night, whatever it is. Come round to Dave's house."
7:00 you arrived.
They had all the stuff there. He goes, "Yeah, we've got microphones, we've got everything, microphones, I've got laptops all set up, we're going to film it, everything." So, right, okay, shit, I better get myself well up together for this. So I did about 3-4 nights worth of research. I had notes. I turned up with A4 sheets of paper, front to back.
This was a job interview for you, wasn't it?
I was like, right, I've got to really make a good impression here.
Yeah.
I turned up. Just bear with us, mate.
we had big issues.
They didn't know what software they were using. The microphones were on. We had headphones on. You could hear yourself through it, and the software they were using was a trial version.
Yeah. So every time we went to record, I sent them downstairs for a cigarette. I thought, okay, cool. Dev's here now. That's great. I looked around. I'd actually found a desk. I was working for Iceland Supermarkets in Staple Hill at the time, and the story of the desk.
Yeah.
There was a charity shop on the main road, and there was like an old receptionist desk which was chucked out on the main road, and it was really good. It was sort of like a half hexagon, so it would have fitted in everybody perfectly at their own little booth. And I've got a couple of colleagues, and I've got Dave Vowles over, and I said, "Dave, let's get this in your van. Let's get it back." So we're dragging this. Brennan, we're supposed to be at work, and I'm the store manager, and I've got these 3 guys out with me saying, "Come on, just load it up on the pallet trucks. Let's just wheel it round, and we'll get it in." This is proper, as you know, Andy. This is retail. Isn't all what it seems from the outside. Believe me, you become like a family. And what I will say is this: we're wheeling it in. I said, "Come on, then, lads. We get a couple of the young lads, and we put it into Dave's van. He takes it home. We've managed to take it apart outside the front of his house, walk it up the stairs, reconstruct it, put together. We've then put the laptop up. We've then set up the microphones that we got from Amazon." Which we don't use anymore. But anyway, we set it up, and then I thought, I need to record it into something. And this is before we were introduced to Audacity.
Yeah.
Now, I downloaded something called Voice Meter Banana, and the issue that we had all the microphones were USB, and they all went into one USB output, which then went into the laptop. So you had one USB with 4 microphones attached to it going into a laptop. However, when I loaded up Voice Meter Potato, they were out. There's 2 versions.
There's
There's banana and potato.
It might as well be potato.
It might as well just be absolutely outrageous. And talking about not going to university, this was really showing through. And basically, I got it working. I started singing into it. For those who know James Harrison locally and Froome and that from back in the day, I can sing a song. I can sing a song. However,
what sort of genres? What's your genre?
From pop to, I wouldn't sing pop downtown. I'd sing Usher and R&B. But then again, I have been adverse to doing a bit of Andrea Bocelli, for instance. And I love music. Like yourself, like with the sick ones, I can even go. Maybe I could stretch to maybe Linkin Park and so if what are the lyrics
to Chester Bennington.
But what are the lyrics to this? I felt the hate rise up in me, kneel down and clear the stone of leaves.
That's Slipknot.
That's Slipknot, correct. Slipknot. And so music. But back to the story. Back to the story really quickly, because we turned up. James turned up. I got them all upstairs, and we started recording. And we're getting into the podcast, and I'm thinking this is absolutely fantastic. And out of nowhere, all you heard was trial. Literally like that. It just went trial like that. Like, what's going on? So we scrapped it, right? Okay, we scrapped it. We got a mobile phone.
Back through the mobile phone.
We went back through a mobile phone, and then from there was before James tells the rest of the story. And I know we're wandering on your podcast, Andy, but this is how TTM was born. I feel it's important. I said a joke to James. I want to get a murderer onto the podcast. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, I really, you remember this?
Yeah.
I said, I want to get a murderer. I want to do a Piers Morgan type interview. I want to go into a jail, and I want to sit down and I want to talk to someone about their thought process behind it and what they're thinking, which I think actually in terms of a podcast would be a bloody good podcast, but we wouldn't even get access to a jail, yet alone to that. And James turns around and he goes,
Speak to me after.
Yeah. And James turns around and he said, it wouldn't look very good. I said, why is that? He goes, well, if you turn up with your current software and you're speaking to a killer, the last thing the killer wants to hear is trial. You know what I mean? But James, you carry on with the story.
It's true. So like Jane says, we recorded, we eventually overcame the trial issue and went back into a mobile phone. With about 12% battery on it.
We got it out.
And so we recorded this podcast, and it became clear to me quite early on that I was very over-prepared for this podcast.
You were the only one that was prepared.
I was the only one that turned up with any notes. I was the only one that turned up with any research done. And we sat around there, and I was talking about the 720
loop
downward spiral that the plane would have had to have done in order to enter the road by the Pentagon. All this, and then we turned around to the other guy that was there, and it said, well, so I'd said all this about how I was saying that the 9/11 was not a terrorist attack, how it was perpetrated by whoever.
Absolutely.
And he was arguing for the fact that no, it was a terrorist attack, and I said all this shit to him and all that, off my notes, all my research and my facts and figures and that. And James turned around and goes, so what do you say to that? What's your arguments at? Well, I just think it was terrorists.
Yeah, so we had James that was putting over a wonderful, compelling argument. I was sort of hosting it with Dave Vowles. We were sort of hosting it, and then we had someone else on the podcast that was saying, no, it wasn't an inside job. It was a clear terrorist attack. And so James was spilling out 3 days worth of, 100 hours of research. And this guy was hitting back saying, yeah, I just don't believe it. I just don't think it was a terrorist attack. I don't think it was an inside job.
Yeah,
it was a terrorist attack.
Why? Well, I just think it was terrorist.
So from there,
right. Then it sort of
it started to disband before it had begun. But I knew that for my own self-being, it's been well documented, and I'm not afraid to say it, that I have maybe not much this last year, but through times of my life, I've sometimes had demons. You know, I and as a man, I'm not afraid to say it now, but I was always didn't want to say it, that I have suffered sometimes with mental health issues. Now they're not mental health issues. You know, I'm not prepared to go into the deep analytical aspect of mental health on the podcast because I'm not yet comfortable. But what I can say is that I'm speaking to my family, people I sought refuge, and I got help. And immediately, almost overnight, I felt great. And do you know what? To be fair, touch wood, I've not had any other issues. But one thing that works for me is always focusing on something. So before lockdown, I'd always, you know, before TTM, I'd play football, and that was my outlet. I would work, and I'd work really hard, and that would make my way up the ranks in the retail world to run my own supermarket, for instance. But since doing podcasting, I've never been more happy. And after that 9/11, I knew instantly that I had to get James involved, because the two other guys, two of them remain my best friends, and you know, it just wasn't for them. David's gone on to form Motivation Music and be signed as an official Spotify artist, and that's something he's passionate on. And now and then I'll give him a bit of hand with that by giving him some vocal samples, which he'll then turn in and just chuck it into music. I don't want any credits. I don't want, nothing to do with it, but I'll help him with that.
Right.
And the other guy, Simon, he has his own things going on too. But in terms of TTM, I didn't want to let it go, and it did stand for the Three Musketeers. And then when you're looking at it yeah, exactly. When you're looking at it,
that's hilarious.
I got James involved. I rang him up on the way home from work one day. I said, "Look, I know you want in. I know you want in. I want you in, and I think I want you to join TTM." And from there, the effort, commitment, dedication that James has shown has taken and elevated TTM to another level. So much to the point of we renamed it Think Twice Medias. We did want Think Twice Media, but there is a company in Los Angeles.
I think they're in Miami, actually.
Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to do a bit of research today. I've had such a crazy day, and I had to try and get some. I was trying to multitask, and I was like, Harry, which one should I listen to? And you were like, No Smoke Without Fire, and I was like, great, cool. So I got on Spotify.
Great pod, in my opinion.
I was like, TTM, and I started listening, and it was these two fucking Irish dudes banging on about football. I messaged Harry. I was like, Harry, is this the one? It's just two Irish blokes. This isn't right.
We've rebranded several times.
Oh,
So the other TTM Sports. I was like, oh, here we go. I've got it.
Yeah. And the reason why you would have found the conspiracy on the TTM Sports, did you listen on, basically, we started off as Think Twice Medias, and we brought it as one. And every podcast, it could have been a sports podcast or it could have been a dark podcast. But when the YouTube channel was born, a lot of our core audience was tuning in for sport. And where we had everything on one outlet, how would you feel if you turned up to find out, you want to do a Premier League preview show and people tune in and you get confronted with a 9/11 conspiracy? It doesn't work. So we made the decision to split it and go TTM Sports and now TTM Dark. However, as of the time of recording right now, we are in the process of moving everything over, and the very first podcast to go out on Dark will be you.
Will be me.
Yeah.
The honor. Okay, no pressure then.
Did you listen to the Travis Walton pod?
Yeah, I listened to. I didn't finish it. I got to the point where, James, you were talking about the polygraph tests and how he'd done 20 of them, and you were saying how at this point, if he was lying, it takes a lot of dedication to lie and go through all of that many times.
Yeah.
And you were saying that if anything, that's kind, in that he's passed them all. Did he pass them all? He passed a lot of them.
There was 7 guys. They did all 7 guys.
Right.
And only one of them, everyone passed apart from one guy that came back inconclusive.
Right.
And he was the guy that he had issues with authority. He'd previously been arrested a few
times.
He
had issues with Travis
He
Walton.
had issues with Travis as well. So I think that may have slightly skewed it.
And I think his result was like 95.7.
He also took further tests and eventually did pass.
Right.
Yeah.
So the point that you're making, James, is that to have done 20 tests, passed them all, and been willing over the years to do that many, that's basically, in your eyes, quite conclusive evidence that he's telling the truth.
Well, yeah, there was that, but there's also the case of these aren't just 5 normal guys. These are lumberjacks.
Right.
These are traditional man's men, as if it were men's men. These
I feel
guys
we need a
don't
synopsis. Let's have a synopsis of this story, because I think some people are going to be listening going, who the hell are these guys?
Yeah, so the Travis Walton story.
Yeah.
He was, they were a group of lumberjacks. It was in Arizona. This was in about 1976 or something like that. So they were going out day by day to this, into the forest, and they were cutting down trees in the forest. They were lumberjacks.
Right.
They went out for the day. They were driving back. They saw what they thought was, a forest fire, the start of a forest fire. They went to this forest fire in the van. 7 of them, 5, 6 or 7 of them. Anyway.
7.
Travis Walton gets out of the car and approaches it. It's a UFO. It's a UFO in the sky. He approaches the UFO.
So it's not a fire, it's the glow
the glow of a craft.
Right, okay.
Which would probably be consistent of something entering the atmosphere as it's cooling down.
Right.
Possibly. But anyway, there's a UFO there. So he gets out of the car, or the van. He approaches it. Beam of light comes from this craft. Shocks him. He hits the floor. So the other guys shit themselves. They all drive off, and then they get sort of a few hundred yards up the road and say, "Oh shit, we need to go back and get him. We can't just leave him."
They are.
Yeah, they thought he was dead.
I think
basically,
the terror.
Yeah, they must
if you
have
ever
been.
see the film is called Travis Walton.
There was fire in the sky, isn't it?
Fire in the Sky. It was a film that, as I mentioned in the podcast, frightened me to the core as a 7-8-year-old child sneaking downstairs behind the sofa to watch my dad watching it, and then he let me watch it, and he knew what was coming in the bit where he woke up on the ship. But anyway, Travis Walton, I'll pick up the story. Travis Walton is hit by this beam, a laser beam hits him, knocks him cold, gone, out cold. The guys drive off to go back to the town, and in the van itself, the mood is split between all of the guys in there. You had half of them that wanted to carry on going to the town. They've just saw something that they don't like. These guys are normally in control of events of their lives. They are in control. They aren't man's men. However, there was the other half that brought a wonderful human aspect to it and said, no, we need to go back and get him. So as they turn the van around, they go back to the spot, and sure enough, he's gone. He's gone. 5 days pass. The world's media start to descend on the town.
Right.
You have the police investigations kicking off. They had them all arrested. They were then going out into the forest. They took the gentleman out into the forest with all the law enforcement and police officers to try and find him. They think that they have murdered him. They think they've murdered Travis. And then out of nowhere, 5 days later, Travis Walton reappears naked in a town 50 miles away.
No, I don't think it was that far.
It was far, but in the rain, wasn't it?
It was a gas station.
Naked.
Or like a phone. He gets to a phone box, doesn't he? Naked in a phone box.
In the pouring rain, and rings his brother.
Right.
And as his brother turns up, he goes over and, no, this is your brother. This is a family member. If you want someone to embrace you, it would be a family member. And in the film, it's depicted, and it's controversial whether this actually happened or not. But as someone goes to embrace him, he immediately, through terror, looks away, don't because he's that afraid. And as you go into the film, he wakes up. Believe it or not, the film wasn't a true adaptation of the actual story. The film is not right, is it? It has been highly controversial to his memoirs.
Yeah, and he's done a lot of podcasts himself, Travis Walton.
Absolutely,
since.
yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so that's basically
there is a new film coming out, I believe. It was supposed to be out last year, but obviously whether that's been delayed by the pandemic. And this is one that Travis Walton has been highly engaged in. He was actually on the Joe Rogan podcast not long ago, Travis Walton, telling his story. And I believe that it was up there of one of the top 4 or 5 alien abductions of all time. 99.9% of all alien abductions, in my opinion, absolute hogwash, rubbish, absolute lies. This is part of that 0.1%, like Betty and Barney Hill, for instance, the first ever real alien abduction story known, which we'll cover in the future. But the lady on that podcast that you listen to, Kelsey Steele, is from Dallas in Texas, and we are very, very close to her. She has her own YouTube channel called Glamour and Goosebumps, and she applies makeup. She works for Charlotte Tilbury, one of the biggest makeup companies in the world, as an area manager in America. It's a big deal. Right. She applies makeup whilst telling these stories and gets a cult following on YouTube.
That's quite a good USP.
Yeah, so we literally teamed up with her, and we're quite close to her, to the point that she sent our wives, hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of makeup for free, just for doing it. But I think talking about back to TTM, in terms of talking about aliens and conspiracies, it's something that always gets people talking. I believe some of them, James believes some of them, there's some that I don't believe, some are just absolutely ridiculous, but which doesn't arouse suspicion. When you talk about Roswell, when something's gone down and the American government immediately declassify it 24 hours later as a weather balloon, and it's something not right, and it just doesn't make sense. But that's the brief overview.
So I tend not to, which doesn't bode well for the TTM Dark we're going to do.
There's always a way of bringing you around.
I tend not to dive into conspiracies too much, because I feel that generally I like them. That's why, because I really like them, and I like that they can make your imagination go in all different places. But I also feel like with a lot of conspiracies, it's generally kind of. It's people that aren't
quite with it.
No, I'm not.
Or
saying
it's what your mind wants you to believe.
Yeah, it's people that aren't satisfied with the world that they live in. They've grown up to believe that there's all this going on in movies and films, and when you're a kid, and there's magic and there's all these things going on, and then you grow up and you want. I want to believe that there's a Bigfoot out there.
I don't believe there's a
want to
Bigfoot.
believe there's a Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
That would be sick.
TTM look at conspiracies from an angle of perspective, from an angle of rational thinking. We don't go into a conspiracy which is just outlandish. For instance, I'll bring it up on the TTM Dark pod later, but when you talk about the pyramids, and I was going off air with Harry beforehand, some of the figures coming out of the pyramids is absolutely outrageous. When you look at the circumference of one of the pyramids, it equates to 365.240 Rubik cubic meters, which is the exact amount of time it takes Earth to travel around the sun. How do the Egyptians get that knowledge? Luck. All right, so then I'll talk about the other five.
I was going to say Pythagoras' theorem, but I'm not sure if that was discovered at that point.
Do you see what I mean? But that's just one instance in one thing. Like you talk about, Stonehenge, conspiracies. I think TTM Dark, believe it or not, as much as we love sport, and it's the staple, and sport we'll always do because we love it. We play the game, we love the game, we talk about the game every single day of our lives.
It's a beautiful game.
And it is a beautiful game. Football, the fastest growing game on earth, and has been for over 20 years, and I don't think it'll ever be surpassed. It's played from Antarctic to the mountainous regions of China. It's played everywhere. And
some people say it's the new religion.
I believe football can be classed as a religion if you talk to some ultras, which are hardcore fans around the world. But, it's the biggest money. There's a lot been going on in the football world recently, which, I don't know if you heard of the Super League and stuff like this, where it's just ultimate greed, which is now gripping our game in a hook, in a grasp that can't seem to be untightened, and it's worrying. However, when those players are on the pitch and it's your team that's playing, it doesn't matter if you have the 11 greatest players to ever play the game and 11 people from a Sunday pub team, there is always that element of they can be beat, and that's what you'll always get with football.
Yeah, sport is mainly what we do.
Yeah,
if we're being honest,
it
is what probably gets us going the most.
Right.
The trouble with doing the sport is you're, like we always say, don't we? You're a tadpole in an ocean trying to do a sports podcast. Really,
they're everywhere
because it's so widely covered.
Yeah.
You're not going to do much which is unique. And you're not really going to be talking about any. You're not going to,
And what's going to happen is you're going to get guys like Crouch. You're going to get the other ex-players, who,
and a lot of them are starting to do podcasting now as well.
They could do it on the side real easy. They could pay a super genius like Harry.
Yeah,
and it's effortless. All they got to do is show up and do it, and the audience is there. Millions. Sponsorship is there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you've got the guys, when they get to about 30, 35, that's when they're kind of, or is that a bit longer now in football? It used to be kind of 35 was retirement age.
Do you know
right?
what? For a park course, you could safely say age 37 to 38 is widely considered to be the norm of, say,
the ducking
I
out.
land at my butts,
right.
my boots.
And there's only so many pundit jobs.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially in the new world that we live in, where the old traditional, James will know what I'm talking about, but the old traditional pundit would have been an ex-player.
Yeah.
Now what they're doing, and probably rightfully so, is they're looking to the women's game. They're looking to further reaches of the football family to bring in pundits, which makes those jobs really, really difficult to get hold of.
And what you got there, your competition is essentially the establishment. It's the stars of the show. So I think Harry sent me a link recently, or was talking about how people from bands or other professions, celebrities, are starting podcasts and essentially taking oxygen away from the guys that are like
absolutely
trying to create a career from the ground up and create a name for themselves. So that is your competition, is Peter Crouch, basically.
I think the bit that comes for us is, are these people going to do it forever? Fair enough. If you talk of a famous player from the mid 1980s, okay, you'll get 400, 500, not many. How many of them have podcasts? Not many. I think in terms of what the thing that we have going for us is we have an element of a connection with the regular fan, and we have an element of looking at it from a fan's point of view. There's always that element of prestige when we get someone on our podcast who's played for England.
Yeah.
And I think it's great because when Peter Crouch is talking to someone who's played for England, he's played for England himself, and I'm sure it's entertainment. But there's always questions that he can't ask. He can't ask what it's like looking around a dressing room at other superstars. He can't ask what it was like getting a telephone call from the England manager for a call-up for the first time. But as fans, we can, and we can open. So I asked Matt Jarvis a question, and Matt Jarvis was an ex-Premier League and England footballer. I asked him a wonderful question, which I don't think would have come up on any other podcast, and I haven't heard it yet, is in football, there's a taboo subject called transfer requests.
Right.
It's where a player goes up to the management of the club and says, I want to leave. And it's always seen with ultra negativity amongst the fan base of that club. It's a real taboo subject.
Right.
And I asked him outright, what are the mechanics behind a transfer request? And you could see I think he wanted to divulge more, but he gave us a wonderful answer, and he just said, look, the opportunity to play in the Premier League was too strong for me. But strong questions like that, we have to be brave, and we have to stand out from the rest of the crowd, which means your promotion on social media. You've got to remember, Peter Crouch podcast, fantastic. But Peter Crouch will have his haters too.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And TTM, what we have from a local perspective is we're on Froome FM. We have our own radio show, and the element of is we get pride that we've built this from the ground up, and it, we will only get stronger. We'll only get better, and that's the way it goes.
And there is something to be said about, like you said, you're coming to it from a fan's point of view. There is something that's, you've got your professional pundits on the TV and everything, but what social media and YouTube has allowed people to do is create their own platform where you watch fans talk about football, and that you got that relatable thing. You have to, but that's a really hard line to walk, because you've got to be, you don't have to be the guys down the pub, but you have to be enough of the guys down the pub that want to talk about the game, and then you also have to have another hat on, which is like you have to maneuver and work the media world in a
absolutely,
in a way, and not everyone's going to be able to do that, but that's a new breed of sports entertainment. Is the guys that can be relatable to the average fan, but still have enough smarts and business acumen,
and still have the ambition. And also, a lot of people podcasts, me and James found earlier on through our research of the game on podcasting, that there are 2 points in which a high percentage of podcasts will stop. There's the 7 podcast dip, and there is also the 19 podcast dip. So it's actually estimated that a massive high percentage of podcasts that stop at either 7 podcasts or 19 podcasts. The fact of the matter is, not only have we overcome that, we've done well, but we've also gone into doing what we call TTM challenges, doing things that celebrities may not do. So once a month or once every couple of months, TTM-Sports undertake a particular challenge, and a couple of the ones that we've done so far have been outrageous.
So we've always played this game. We've had this game that we've played. We've done it with guests, and we do it every time on the radio show. And it's fact or fiction. Now, fact or fiction was something James came up with, and it's basically true or false. So he'll make a statement. If I was to say to you, Andy, I don't know, that table is made of genuine wood from the Amazon rainforest, fact or fiction, what would you say?
It's probably mostly fact, isn't it?
I'm afraid it's fiction, Andy.
Exactly.
So that is the basis of fact or fiction. So fact or fiction just kind of grow, and it's.
Oh, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. It's fiction.
It's just no.
you're right.
It's a bit of fun. So we've played it with people. So fact or fiction. How can we incorporate fact or fiction into a challenge?
Exactly.
Right.
So this is where we have to think outside the box.
So the first thing we did, right? Okay, so we're going to get the world's hottest chilies.
Yeah.
So we got some
Trinidad Moruga scorpion chili peppers, which are the second most hottest chili pepper known to man. They were the first until the world famous Carolina Reaper took over. The Carolina Reaper is actually around 2 million Scoville units. So just for context, the average jalapeno that you'll eat will be 4,000.
I can barely handle jalapeno.
Yeah, that's 4,000.
I don't like spicy food at all.
These bad boys were 1.8 million.
I got gloves. We got plastic gloves, and we cut them up in my kitchen.
Yeah.
So we got my missus to read out the questions. We did it in my kitchen,
Right.
And I made signs. So this was for YouTube video.
Right.
Questions were sent in by listeners.
So my missus, I said, right, if you've got any questions for fact or fiction, send them to Jess, and so I made these signs, fact on one side, fiction on the other. We sat at a table. We had the plate of chilies, didn't we?
Yeah.
and then Jess would read them out, and it was right. Blah 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 blah. Fact or fiction. We would hold the board up. If you got it right, you moved on. If you got it wrong, you had to eat the chili.
Right.
And
So,
we filmed this for YouTube, and I had to eat 3 of these chilies, and you had to eat 2, didn't you?
Yeah, I won. But the second
was
challenge we did
wild.
was outrageous.
Oh, yeah.
The second challenge, and I'll explain this one. You may have heard of it. A YouTube boom going on sporadically for the past 5 or 6 years. It's surströmming. The world's
It's what?
stinkiest fish.
Surströmming.
Right.
You heard of that?
Have you never heard of that? So in Sweden, it's a rare delicacy. The Viking sailors back in the 1800s would go on these long voyages and have herring fish,
Right.
and they would have to use salt on this fish. But when the salt ran dry, there was no salt left. They then had to find a way of preserving this herring to eat it. So what they did is they let it ferment within its own bacteria. And what it is, it's disgusting. It's the world's stinkiest fish. So, we implore your listeners to put it on your YouTube. Just put surströmming. We'll probably be up on the algorithm.
If you can spell it, fair play as well.
Yeah, just put stinkiest fish in the world. And basically, it comes in a highly pressurized can. Okay, the can that we got, I swore it had a bit of rust around the outside. I was thinking, this is dangerous.
I ordered it from the Swedish Kitchen website.
Exactly, yeah. It was a really good delivery service.
It was fantastic.
arrived quite quick.
3-4 days. I think I actually got a next day delivery.
And how did it arrive?
So it arrived in a cardboard box.
Not that freshness mattered.
The freshness was not on their priority list, or ours for
Go
that
for the
matter.
free delivery.
Yeah,
on that one,
so it turned up in a cardboard box. You opened a cardboard box. It had like it was duct taped up.
Duct taped up. This is a tiny can.
And it
guys.
had like sponges around the can as well. And so we had to cut into it. You see it if you ever watch the video, you'll see it. So when we hadn't opened it at all yet. So when we were filming it, we did the same thing, the fact or fiction with the questions. We opened up this tin. I went to Proper Job. I bought 2 washing up bowls for £1 each. In case we were sick.
Proper job, that.
No, it was a proper job. I bought tarpaulin. I went to Proper Job with about £5 and I came out with about 4 washing up bowls, 2 tarpaulins.
It's incredible value. Of course, it disintegrated for weeks
tablecloth.
after it was bought. But
It came out of everything, and I had about £4.50 change. So we did that, and I opened it up. I got the knife, opened it up, got the tin opener.
first squirt.
You open it, and you put the can open. It goes. And it fucking squirts out. Sorry.
Yeah.
It squirts out, and the juice just flies out. I thought, all right.
We'll watch it before we go live in a bit.
I can't
before
really
our
smell it.
pod.
Right.
I can't smell it yet. It's fine. Turn the can open like 1 degree, like, and it just went boom. And
Back to the video.
Jesus.
When that moment, because we're laughing because we're nervous. Okay, it was a nervous laugh. We know what's coming. We've saw it on YouTube, and we know. So James has opened the first squirt of the can. Tss, nothing. He goes, "Can you smell anything? Can you smell anything?" No. Opens a bit more. Tss, sure you can smell anything? We go, no. And when we breathe in, we went, and then that moment after you breathe in, it sort of just tickled the little hairs on the inside of your nose. And what happened was, it's like we both went, fucking hell, like it was mega. And the smell that I likened it to is this, okay, and I explained it on the go in the video, is if you got a sock, okay, and you left that sock outside in the rain, and then you put it down into a drain, into a sewer, and you left it for 6 months. You then grabbed that sock out and you drained that sock, and all the juice and sewage that comes off of that sock goes into a tin can, okay? That's your juice. So from there, you have fish that's been left to ferment within its own bacteria and rotting, okay, mixed in with that stuff. It is the most they should feed it to, I'm not going to say it.
No,
on the podcast,
I'll say
but it's
it.
bad.
They should feed it to child sex offenders in prison, and that should be all they're allowed to eat. And the only drink,
bad.
the only drink they should
It's
get
bad.
is the juice.
Yeah.
It is vile.
Pedo porridge.
Yeah, literally.
It's terrible. They should do it to, I think, I even said to, I even proclaimed to the nation of Sweden during the video. I said, Sweden, why? Why are you doing this to yourself?
This one's for the Swedes. Why?
So back to the game. We the first question comes, and I'm struggling, and I'm burping, a little bit sick coming out, and I'm really, really, really struggling with this. I can't even change the bin on a Sunday without gagging. I just don't like it. I don't know what it is. It's disgusting. So what I can say is this. As Jess, what we call James's wife, the Duchess is what she's called in TTM videos, challenge videos.
Yeah, she's the Duchess.
And that's what she wants to be called. And she doesn't want to be on camera and fair play, but she does a really good job of asking the questions and actually keeping a straight face. And she's doing a good job, to be fair to her. She asks the question, James holds up a fact board, I hold up a fiction board, and I've got it wrong. And I'm thinking, oh no, I need to eat some of this fish. He holds up the fish. My world crumbled like a fork entering an apple crumble. It just disintegrated into nothing. It was my being, my soul had been ripped out, chewed up and kicked down the can. It was an absolute outrage. And as I tried to eat this fish, I picked up the fish, my hand was shaking, and this wasn't for effect. It was genuine fear because it smelt that bad. And as I moved the fish right up to my lip, I felt a couple of hairs on the fish off of its gill touch my top lip, and I could smell it, and I just went like that, and I couldn't do it. And for the one and only time on fact or fiction, I tapped out.
And I was so glad, because I didn't want nothing to do with that fish. So none of us ate it.
Oh, for fuck's
Long story
I
short,
dare you to do it.
None of us ate it.
We'll dare you to do it. We'll dare Andy Wrintmore, and we'll put it out on your podcast in front of your listeners. Andy Wrintmore, Mayor of Frome, whenever you're ready. I'm not taking part in it. James got a better stomach than me, but I believe we should set up a challenge to do the Sostromen Stinky Fish Challenge for charity.
Now
you've mentioned charity.
I
kinda have to
propose
say
a
yes,
different challenge.
Okay.
Which is, we get a good couple of cans of Sostromen, right?
Do we need more than one?
We're going to need more than one for this, all right?
Right.
It's only £12.
And we'll all eat as much as we can.
I can't eat
The
it.
last man standing is the mayor.
Well, that sounds perfectly democratic.
Andy will win. He wants this, and do you know what? Just
Can we
touching
wear
on-
like nappies? Can I just sit there and shit?
nappies, mate? I think I'm going to need a bib. I think I'm going to need one of them nappies with a little pin which holds it together. I don't think I can hold it together. One of the ideas for the next challenge, before we get onto the challenge in your podcast, because I know time's ticking, but one challenge that we do want to do is to revisit those chilies. And there is the Wiltshire Chili Farm, which is based out at Melksham. And what we want to do is do it with fresh chilies, and we make our way up the Scoville scale with a table out there with the chili field in the background, good weather, fact or fiction, myself against James, and someone an adjudicator who works at the Wiltshire chili farm saying, yeah, this here is the the ghost pepper from the Navarra region of Chile. They do say that one tip on your tongue will numb it for 6 weeks or something like that to add some suspense and do that. But the best challenge that we've done so far, which has gained media coverage, 8,500 views on YouTube, is the 20 and 24.
Yeah, so that's the 2024. You mentioned it off air, Andy. So even you've heard of it. So the Mayor of Froom's aware, which is good.
Good stuff.
That's great. 20 and 24. So we visited every Premier League ground in the country in 24 hours. So James came up with the idea. I don't know where he came. He must have seen someone else. Other people have done it on YouTube. So we said, right, okay, we did. It took about 2-3 months before we actually got round to getting on and doing it.
How much did you pay in petrol? How much petrol?
It wasn't that bad, was it?
It was, I think, all in, it was about £150.
Not bad for a full tour of the UK.
It was 1,000 miles.
It was 1,000 miles.
Right.
Yeah, it was 997.6 miles or something
So
ridiculous.
What's the most southerly?
So we started at Southampton at 6 o'clock at night. So the main aim was we needed to get to London in the night time, basically.
To miss the traffic.
Yeah,
That's
so we
right.
started Southampton at 6 in the evening on the Saturday. Got down to Brighton for about 7:30. So went Southampton to Brighton. From Brighton, we went up to Crystal Palace, which is in southeast London, at about 9.
That's right.
And then, but London, so there's 6 stadiums in London. You've got Crystal Palace, Fulham, Chelsea, West Ham, Arsenal, Tottenham. That took from about 9
till about
1 in the morning.
with a police.
We got stopped by the police.
Stopped by the police for being polite.
Yeah.
You know, James, there was a dual carriageway which merged into one. We were in the left lane, the police were in the right lane. James slows down to allow the police cars to go in front, which aroused their suspicion.
You got to remember, you're in London.
Yeah,
Exactly,
but that's what I said to him. I said, round our way, we just let them go first.
Yeah, the police, have absolute authority, and they do a good job at what they do, in my opinion. But what I will say is this: the police held on. And I said, "You're gonna have to go." So he drove, and all you hear is "woo," with the lights shining, "woo," literally right behind. And I thought, like, our heart sank. I thought, what have we done? We were, in terms of COVID and stuff like that, the restrictions were eased, so we were able to do it as long as we weren't, going into buildings. For instance, James was in the, a bubble that we had. So
they obviously scanned the number plate and they're thinking,
saw from Somerset.
what is a Somerset car doing in London? So they are naturally assumed that it was a stolen
And
car.
you're driving like a drug mule.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they got out and they James lied, and he stated that I was having I was living in
I said you were living in Kent, and he'd had a bust up with his missus, and we'd had to go and pick him up. Bear in mind, we're in central London, so I don't know what way that we were gone. And we had
probably would have been better off if you went, look, we're doing a YouTube channel, we did every stadium in 24 hours, and they would have went, that's a pretty cool idea, actually.
We've never had much dealings with the law, and we don't want to visit any issues in the law in the future. And I think, look, as far as we're concerned, the police were great with us. They said, keep taking the precautions you're taking. You're doing a good job. The police were great with us. They could see that we weren't taking the mick, that we were actually legal at that point.
They could see that I was shitting my pants as well, and they probably thought fair enough. But anyway, so London took ages. We didn't get out of London till about 1 in the morning.
We were stuck in traffic for an hour at Harrods.
Yeah,
But you know what? To go to these stadiums that you see on TV is unbelievable. We went to the Olympic Park. We went to Chelsea, Stamford Bridge. We went to Emirates Stadium, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and then obviously we hit the M4 and we captured all of this on video. We captured the lot going up the M4 in the middle of the night and then hitting the Midlands into the early hours of the morning.
Yeah. So, but we had the added issue was that the clocks went forward.
Yeah.
So we gained an hour. So we had to, I annoyed them all because I kept saying at every place. So just to be aware that the clocks have gone forward. And so we Midlands, we got up to Liverpool about 7 o'clock in the morning, which would have been 6. Liverpool. So Midlands, Liverpool, Manchester, up to Burnley. Have you ever been to Burnley?
Don't go.
I've probably been to Burnley.
Very, very strange place.
I've been there twice in my life, and I've been underwhelmed both times. Sorry, people of
Where is
Burnley.
Burnley? Just in
It's
Midlands?
north of Manchester,
It's the gateway to the north, over across the Pennines. Isn't it?
Then we went across the Pennines, so it was quite wild. Across from Burnley, then we went all the way across country through Yorkshire to Harrogate, got on the A1, all the way up to Newcastle, past the Angel of the North.
Right.
Which we lost in the footage.
Yeah.
Really annoyed us.
Got to Newcastle about midday. So bearing in mind, by this point, we'd been on the road for about,
I'd say about 17, 18 hours
something
straight
like that,
driving.
with no sleep.
Yep.
Back down from Newcastle, down to Leeds to Sheffield, and we finished in Leicester. That's just the way we decided to do the route. We could. There's various different ways you could have done it. We did it differently to the guy that beat the record before.
Yeah, we went.
So our route, we went a bit different. So we finished in Leicester at 4:10, but with that hour that we gained, it would have been still 7 minutes past 4. So it would have been 7 minutes past 3. So we did it in 21 hours, 6 minutes.
And how did you do? Because I've done a lot of stuff like with the band touring and stuff.
Yeah.
And driving at night can be intensive, even though the roads
and it was raining as well.
Oh right, okay.
It was stormy.
So the roads are quieter, but there's less visual stimulation.
Yeah.
So there's almost less to do when you're driving at night.
We spoke about the world as you do when you go on, unless it's just me, I don't know, but when
the road trip conversations are the best.
Takes you, the aliens were spoke about 20 minutes down the road to Brighton, right into the challenge, but we talked about life in general. We talked about plans for the future. We talked about we're going to get this record. We talked about what guests are we going to do? We talked about the immense pride and privilege that we have to leave the lives that we have. And
talked loads about football.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we're visiting every Premier League ground in the country. We talked about
how underwhelming Burnley was.
Yeah, Burnley was a real disappointment for us, wasn't it? So disappointing.
It was.
If you ever want your kitchen done,
right,
go to Burnley. There are so many bathroom shops in Burnley. There's loads. Tiling, bathroom flooring, taps. I think there were shops just for taps.
It's about as run down as Blackpool, which is a shame. Blackpool, I would say, as a British citizen, is a staple of our country. I believe Blackpool, everybody's been to Blackpool, everybody knows about the tower, everybody knows about Blackpool until you get there. And then you get there and you walk up, take the beachfront away. It's just so run down, deprived of investment, which is such a shame. But I thought Burnley was quite similar. I thought it in previous eras it would have been a really vibrant place, but I think it's just been caught up in society now, deciding, do you want to go to the Pennines for a holiday and have a windy weekend retreat away in a caravan, or do you want to go to Tenerife?
I mean, no one's ever gone on holiday to Burnley anyway, I'm sure.
Too great. I've never been to Blackpool.
Really?
Never been to Blackpool, actually.
I've only been once for the afternoon, so...
Two things. Peter Kay, live at the top of the tower.
Yeah.
One of the greatest stand-up comedy routines, DVDs of all time.
Agreed.
I think, I mean in the genre, I think. It's probably not going to be... It's not very universal because it's very about British culture. But
yeah.
And the other one is the Stone Roses live at Blackpool Tower. That's also immense.
And that's what we're saying.
As far as Blackpool goes for me.
It's an important city. Blackpool, for me, would be in the top 10 cities of our country, with London, with Bristol, with Manchester, Birmingham, Newcastle. I think Blackpool is a bit... If you live in the West Midlands, you wouldn't know this, because people in the West Midlands, from the industrial heartlands and Sheffield and all these places that back in the 50s, 60s, 70s had a lot of work, and as you go into the late 70s, into the Margaret Thatcher era, the work starts to dry up, and it's a fact. And there wasn't much money, and my uncles still live up there now, and they go to Blackpool for a holiday because they simply cannot afford to go abroad. And the reality is Blackpool and even down south where you go to Clacton-on-Sea, these demographical areas are rich in history from your typical beach getaway from eras gone by.
Right. They're sort of ghost towns in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I've had similar experiences like elsewhere in the world where you go through places. I went through the Rust Belt in Ohio,
right?
And you can see where there was once industry,
yeah,
where there was once a thriving world, where people came, moved there from other places to have a middle class white picket fence life or whatever. And I think what you're saying is Blackpool used to be the destination of those times gone by.
No doubt.
And it's it is sad. I've seen houses boarded up. I've seen factories.
That's Blackpool.
Right.
It was boarded up, and it's a shame. And if this country went through a bit of a resurgence a few years ago of actually holidaying in the UK. It was a big thing that let's go away, let's put back into
a
staycation and places like. But then again, I went to Butlins with the kids. Right, the kids were very young. We weren't ready to take them abroad. We luckily enough in my life I have the finances to take them abroad, but we thought that they're young. We don't want to do that, so we thought, well, let's go for a British break. Let's do a Haven. Let's do a Butlins. Let's go to that. We went to Butlins in Minehead. Right. It didn't look like that place has been rented. I went there in 2000, the year 2000, with my parents and my brother, and it's when they'd had that like sort of tent thing built that it's all housed in Minehead, and it's so run down. The chalets, the wood is just, it's falling apart, and I thought, my God. But then as you walk into the cafeterias and the places to eat, it's got all the pictures up from the 40s and 50s and stuff like that, when you could see that this place was a real haven. And it's got an abandoned pool there, which a lot of YouTubers have gone in. It's quite famous. It's the abandoned pool of Butlins in Minehead. So I waited till the last day because I didn't want to get kicked off a site. And my kids are playing on the fun fair, which is round the back. And I saw the stairs, and I went onto my YouTube, and I thought, how did these guys get in? I want to see it. It's an abandoned swimming pool. All the water's still in and everything as it was, but hasn't been touched for years.
Now, why haven't they?
And I'll tell you why. Tell you why. They haven't drained it because it holds the water for the sprinklers for the cafeteria below. And for some reason, they say if they drain that water out of the pool, it will just collapse. And I don't understand that, because the weight would surely make it collapse itself. But do your research into it. But I went up the stairs and I turned to the right and I walked in, and you can still smell that swimming pool bit and the posters on the wall from like 1997 and stuff like that. And it was literally a relic. And I was only 5 minutes in there, but I thought, God, I felt a bit of rush of doing it. TTM Dark had a phase where we were going to be urban explorers for a bit.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any recommendations for good urban exploring YouTube channels? Because I found one guy that likes to go through. He's like a scientist guy, and a scientist guy sounds a bit stupid. He's like an author and a scientist, and maybe even a university lecturer. He would go under the tunnels in New York with old maps and find these old rooms and things, and find this old city. And he said he did some stuff like that in Russia, and they came up out of
the Buran space shuttles in Russia or Kazakhstan where the guys went to. Have you heard about that one?
No, this is just a guy that just like, he's a purely academic kind of guy, like kind of exploring. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, he ends up in Russia. He ends up coming up out of. They get a bit lost and they're underneath these tunnels. And they end up coming up in the middle of fucking Red Square, and all these Russian soldiers are like. And it's like some American guy is coming up through a sewer drain cover in Red Square, and they're like, "Oh shit!" This, they got away with it. But
a lot of the ones we've watched they're mainly like UK based, aren't they?
We love them. I didn't want to probably reveal it until a few months down the line, but I have made contact. There's a famous one in the UK by the name of Matt, and he goes to a lot of old World War II bunkers which have been remained untouched, old infirmaries, mental institutions, asylums, and a lot under Corsham. Now, we took a trip down an old mine shaft just outside of Corsham. For those that don't know, underneath Corsham is what they have called the Burlington Bunker. You may have heard of it. In the Cold War, that was the place where the whole War Cabinet, the Prime Minister, and the entire Home Office would have been positioned underneath Corsham. Decommissioned in 1991 and sold off to the quarry. Still still no access is allowed. And Nick Pope did a video on YouTube for Ancient Aliens, and this American guy walks up to the gate, and out of nowhere, police car flies out the corner. What are you doing here? It's called the Corsham Computer Center. I think I showed you, Harry, off air. And basically, underneath Corsham, there is still a massive network of tunnels with, they call it the UK Area 51, where they've got stuff under there that they don't want you to know about. So I've reached out to this Matt, or let's say his closest aide, where he will give us access to look at places like this, especially underneath London is a big one, like the old World War bunkers underneath London, where they, abandoned underground stations which have been left untouched for 60 years. To me, that's really interesting to go and have a look at. The only issue you have with it is you don't want to get in trouble, so they go to places that are let's say open.
Right. Well, we have a series of tunnels under Frome, don't we?
You do.
We have a network of tunnels.
Do.
And I've never been in them. And I imagine being 6'9", I'm not going to fit in them.
I'd be perfect.
But what I would love to do is go down there with a mobile pod rig and a guide and go through the tunnels.
Well, let's make it happen. Let's go down with TTM Dark and the Giant Pod for an installment underneath the tunnels in Frome.
Yes. Well, apparently when they put the tunnel, they do tunnel tours during the Frome Festival.
Yeah.
And apparently
right.
as soon as they put them up, they get booked up.
I'm sure as the mayor, you can have some sort of sway.
I might be able to...
Have you used your mayoral status yet?
Well, I've only been the mayor since Wednesday.
So what have you been? Well,
It's nearly a week already.
I've sent a couple of clouty emails.
yeah.
Good man.
I won't go into it, but
what perks do you get then as the mayor?
what perks? Well, the thing is, as the mayor, I don't have any more. Let's say I don't have any more power. Let's say on paper than I did when I was a councillor. I'm still a town councillor.
Yeah.
I just happen to have a title. But what the mayor has is a bit of influence, really.
Yeah.
So with these, I'm not going to go into it because I'm not going to go into some of the emails I've sent this week because
of course you can't.
But basically, it's kind of like if once the mayor sends the email and says, "I'm aware of this, I would like you to look at this again and maybe come back to me and see what we can do about this particular issue."
Well, yeah, it's
you
good.
hope that they go, "Okay, well the mayor is now looking at this. Maybe we should take this more seriously." It's not like Trump, like on the phone to some senator saying, "Find me 200 votes."
No, but I think the mayor is a strong positional standing within any town, because the mayor's role, in my opinion, is to be the voice of the people. And I think when the people want something looking at and it's not being looked at, then the mayor sends a clouty email, for instance, to say, "No, I need you to look at this." Well, that's the right thing to do, and congratulate you in doing that. And I think as far as we're concerned, on behalf of, whoever I know in my life, congratulations to you for getting that done. And again, it's just to make people aware, just like with TTM, that you can achieve things regardless of age, regardless of race, creed, sexual orientation, anything of that. You can achieve it if you put your mind to it.
So that was the first podcast back in person with actual human beings. That was with James and Dev from TTM Podcasts. Make sure that you head over to TTM Podcasts to hear my appearance on TTM Dark right now. Before you do anything else, go watch that episode. Go listen to that episode. Catch the next half of our hangout over there.